Okay, now we are recording. So last week you did a lot of readings all about the writing process, and one of the discussion forums was particularly about assumptions that you have about writing that now you're beginning, hopefully, to question and push back against. This exercise we just did, where you attempted to describe smoke without using the word smoke, accessing different descriptive phrases or words to get at it. One of the assumptions that was coming up again and again was that we needed to use really sophisticated language or kind of formal, impressive, smart sounding language in order to sound like we know what we're talking about. What if you were allowed to simply use the simple and direct word? Just say the simple and direct word, but know that a simple word doesn't necessarily have to be a general word, right? A general and simple aren't necessarily the same thing. You can use a precise and simple word. Like when someone said a campfire that I never wanted, that's not complicated language, but it's very precise. It's more than just saying it was smoky out, right? There's a descriptive nature to that phrase that helps readers and the writer access the experience more directly, but it doesn't sound like it's trying to be fancy or sophisticated or smart. It's just getting at it. Think about words the way you might think about paintbrushes. You need different sizes paintbrushes to get at different jobs, right? If I'm painting a house, I'm definitely going to want some rollers and some trim brushes and a sprayer. If I'm doing a watercolor, I want different kinds of brushes. If I'm doing like those, the really precise lettering, then I need a different kind of brush. So a paintbrush is a way of getting paint into a place to do a certain job. Your words, the language that you use, it's also doing a job. And certain words give you access to the little nooks and crannies of an experience in ways that bigger, more general words won't. So you can use a simple and precise word to get into the nuance of an experience. And so don't think so much about being smart or sounding sophisticated or formal. Think more in terms of precision and accuracy. And you don't actually have to use words that are from the thesaurus to do that. You've got all kinds of vocab inside you already. Access what you have and use it to be as accurate and precise as you can be. Does that make sense? Like, if you rely on the thesaurus, just give yourself a break. Enjoy the words that you already have command of. Just practice using them in new ways. And then, as you're out in the world of reading and listening, and you hear someone use a word that you don't know, just look it up, add it to the list, practice using it, but don't stress over whether or not you've got a vocabulary that's going to impress your reader or your teacher. It's not what you have, it's how you use what you have. Okay, so another assumption that showed up a lot was the no contractions. Well, maybe. Again, it all depends on the tone, and it all depends on whether or not the contraction is calling attention to itself. Sometimes the lack of a contraction calls attention to itself, more so than the contraction would. Does that make sense? So please don't feel bound to that rule either. Personal pronouns. Once again, sometimes trying to avoid using the pronoun I just sounds so fabricated and labored, like we're really trying to not say the easy thing that we're trying to say. Just, it's okay. We all know somebody wrote it. We all know that a person is behind it. So again, your ability or the freedom to use different kinds of personal pronouns really is going to be affected by the discipline in which you are writing and or publishing, and the type of piece that you're writing. But it's not a blanket rule that applies at all times. And in this class, for our purposes, you are allowed to use the personal pronoun I. Okay. Another one, that your thesis statement has to appear at the end of a first paragraph, the end of your introduction. Actually, it does not. Your thesis can appear toward the end of a paper, as long as your paper has been organized in a way that your reader knows what you're talking about and why. And in this class, we are writing question-driven research essays rather than thesis-driven argument essays. An argument essay starts with the claim, and it uses a pattern of reasoning supported by examples and evidence to get an audience to accept that claim. There's this agenda going in. A research essay, inquiry-driven, is very different. It's tracking the writer's consciousness, to borrow the phrase from Philip Lopate, and it owns and acknowledges how the questions lead to other questions. And instead of hiding that thought process from your reader, you're letting your reader in on that thought process with you. There is the freedom then that the real root of the word essay, to attempt or to try, that you are actually living into that definition. With an essay, you are attempting, you're trying to get at something that you haven't gotten at before. You're trying to answer a question that actually has like real weight or import for you. So no, it does not have to be. Another assumption was that good writing has to be certain. Well, several of the pieces we read last week, I hope, helped affirm that it does not have to be certain. It has to be honest and honest and clear, and supported with the voices of external sources. Good writing is a reflection of clear, good thinking. Like clear writing is a reflection of clear thinking. So as long as you are thinking clearly and reflecting clearly on what it is you're asking and how it is you are answering it, and how you are interpreting the voices of others who are also attempting to answer similar questions, all that clarity that's happening internally showing up on the page, that helps create really strong pieces of writing. I have to tell you, this is one of the first times I've ever heard about speed writing and timed essays. What is that terrible, torturous thing? That sounds awful. I mean, they must have changed things since I've been in school, obviously. What, yeah.
I've never had to, I don't think I've ever really had to write a timed essay, but in middle school, we had like 5 minutes or whatever to write as much as we possibly could. And like, well, we would be, I wouldn't say like graded, but we got like participation for hitting like a certain word count in that time period, which I thought was like a little absurd.
How old were you?
Well, I was like 11.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I mean, I'm used to writing essays when you've got a class period and you've got to answer your question before the end of the class or something like that. But this sense of how many can you generate in an hour or something like that? Savannah, you already had that?
That's what we did with like I remember like junior year drinking like a caramel macchiato, like an entire one before my like LA final, because I had like buzzed out like 3 essays in like an hour and a half. And that just seems so unrealistic to me. So like that was like the only good timing for like me. But the SAT, like there was like a timed essay that you had to do on it.
It was like an additional essay too.
Yeah, like only some people stayed to take it.
Like
So,
I didn't
like,
do it
if
because I
you
didn't
were
want to
doing
do it.
Okay, so we've got some notes. Kelsey had to do it for AP English and Literature, so did Grice, so did Piper. Write a 2-page paper in 1 hour. Alex had to do that. State testing. Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Okay. So frankly, all of this timed under the gun kind of essay writing, it's kind of communicating that a good writer is someone who can do it quickly. That is not true. Good writing takes a lot of thought, a lot of preparation, and to perpetuate this thought that you, in order to be a good writer, have to be able to pull it off fast. That's misleading, and I think it sets a lot of people up for thinking that they're not good writers. Actually, not true. So I'm going to tell you a little story. I don't think I told this class this story. I don't think I've told any class this story this year. That when I was in my early 20s, I joined an adult introduction to ballet class. Did I tell you this? I didn't do it because I wanted to dance. I did it because I was terrified of dancing. To me, I couldn't think of anything worse. It was like my worst nightmare, like leotards and long banks of windows and bars and teachers who were telling you to do certain things. It just sounded like a nightmare. And I realized that this fear had me in its grip. And I did not like that I was so afraid of something, so intimidated by this thing. So I signed up and I bought 4 classes in advance so that I wouldn't quit. And the first class was the worst. Like, I was close to tears the whole time. I was biting my inside of my lower lip. It was just awful. Well, I stayed in adult introduction to ballet. This was just for grown-ups. Just for grown-ups. It was in this really beautiful old wooden floored studio across the street from Powell's Books on Burnside. And from the top floor of this studio, the bar went along the window, and I could look out the window across Burnside to all of the people sitting in the reading room. At the time, it was called the Ann Hughes Reading Room. They had the best shortbread cookies ever. And I would stand at the bar looking out the window down at the people reading happily, peacefully in the Ann Hughes Reading Room. And I was so jealous of them because they were not being tortured by a ballet teacher named Christina, who wandered around and said things like, tuck in your popo, by which she meant your ass, and make sure that your cookies aren't sticking out, by which she meant your stomach. And then at the end, where she would say it was time to finish, she would say, show your diamonds to the balcony. That's where the patrons sit. And I'm like, oh my God, this was just like the worst. However, one day she said something. Oh, by the way, I stayed in adult introduction to ballet for 3 years. I just kept going. It kept me, well, I laughed at myself. I felt awkward all the time. I didn't get better. I just practiced. I was not a good dancer. But one day, Christina, she said a couple things that just got me. She said, ballet never becomes easy. It only becomes possible. And I remember thinking, oh, that's terrible news. But at the same time, it's sort of liberating. Whatever belief we have that certain things should become easy, that people who make it look easy are just good at it, that's not accurate. So to somehow like remove the facade that certain things are effortless or should be, and to be honest instead about what the experience is really like, that hopefully makes people who might be really down on themselves feel welcome to the party. It's not like you're having an experience that you shouldn't be having as writers. The fact that writing is difficult and takes a while and causes some stress, well, I wish that the story were different, but it really isn't. For example, now I want to be fair here though. Writing's also like, I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. And I wouldn't have spent so much of my life practicing it if there weren't real gifts that come from it. And certain experiences of writing have been full of flow and full of unself-conscious expression and have been pure joy. Whenever I've had to write for someone else who's going to evaluate it, I don't tend to have that free joy experience, however. So yesterday, for example, I would like to say this, through no fault of my own, this is true, I did not procrastinate. I found out belatedly that I was responsible to turn in something written. I did not know this. I spent most of yesterday doing it. I was not having a good day. Yesterday was not great. I spent most of the morning wearing a path in the carpet between my chair and the refrigerator, basically doing all of the normal ways of avoiding this thing that I had to do, and feeling angry that I wasn't better at handling a writing assignment. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just right back where my students are all the time, which is, here's an empty page, now you have to fill it. So I basically want to tell you that there are so many different ways of relating ourselves to the process, but normalizing the fact that it can be uncomfortable and it can feel like a lot of pressure. If you know right away that that's normal, that that's not because you're not good at it, and not because you're doing it wrong, and not because you're just, a bad writer. If you just can know now that a certain amount of discomfort in getting started and a certain amount of discomfort in figuring out how to do it is part of the experience, then you'll know it's not you, it's writing. I don't know if that helps or doesn't help. So maybe one of the assumptions we have is that it should be progressively effortless. No, it's just progressively possible and familiar, but it does take some effort. For a moment here, let's together reflect on those pieces that we read last week. And we read Shitty First Drafts, Madman, Architect, Carpenter, Judge, the essay, An Exercise in Doubt, Why Questioning, the opening of a book, and The Mother of All Questions. Of those readings, what emerged for you as writers? What emerged as takeaways, things that you now perhaps think differently about writing, having read those pieces? Yeah, Savannah.
It's about being comfortable with struggling, because one thing I always caught myself is like, as soon as the prompt comes out, like everybody has an idea and like sometimes you don't, and like you start panicking, but like no, it's fine, like you have to think about it more.
Yes, it is fine. And one of the ways I think is with a pen in my hand. So I might start by saying, here's the prompt. I have no idea what I think about this prompt. It's like just getting the pen moving engages more of my body, like physically. I am doing more than just thinking. And it helps me to align the thinking and the moving of the pen. That's just a trick I use. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, the one about the madman thing, like that one kind of just like, I don't know, like I like recognize that I do that anyways, and like I noticed that he's like my best friend when it comes to writing technically, because like a lot of times I feel like I just can't get my thoughts out, and then he just takes over, and then I'm like writing like 10 pages, and then I'm like, oh, okay, and then I can go back and analyze it. But yeah.
Now we got to get an architect in here, quick.
Yeah.
Other things that stand out from the readings. Yeah.
I mean, going off of what she said, like, I almost never know exactly what I'm gonna write until after I start writing. And then, like, once I start writing, then I just kind of don't stop. Because, like, I get to a point where it's like, I want to write this, and then I'm, like, thinking ahead of what I'm already writing. And then, like, it just keeps going. But it takes so long to get to that point that, like, everything is delayed. And, like, I feel the sense of, like, struggle because I don't know how to get there yet.
Okay. So one of my personal takeaways is always to budget for myself twice as much time as I think it's going to take. Just to leave in the time for standing in front of the fridge with the door open and know that that's part of it. And apparently I'm just going to need all that time. Yeah, John.
I just liked at the end of like, I think it's what's called the shitty first drafts.
Yeah.
She uses the analogy of like the mice putting in the jar. And I feel like my problem is not thinking too little, but thinking too much. And I think that was just like really helpful to me, because it's a lot of times I'm not just thinking like, oh, like I can't think of anything. I just don't know what in my head to put down. I think that helps. That helped me at least.
There's like so much happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which is why, by the way, longhand writing can actually be a way of slowing down thinking, not in a way that's sluggish, but in a way that's metered. I find that when I'm trying to compose on a screen, there's a funny psychological shift that happens. Number one, I see the blinking cursor, which is a subtle form of pressure. It lets me know that time is passing. Also, when I compose on a screen, my editor, my judge, can get involved way faster, because I can go back and delete and go forward and delete and go forward. I can start moving text around. That's actually not all that helpful early on. Another thing about composing on screen is that when I see it typed, there's a sense that typed things are finished things, or should be of a higher quality because they are typed. When I write longhand, a few things happen. And I actually urge you to practice this in some capacity this term. It doesn't work for some people, so I'm not gonna like force you, but I'm inviting you to try it out. When you write longhand, suddenly your hand can only make the words so fast. As opposed to typing, you can just spit things out really fast, but then you can delete them just as fast. There comes a moment when I'm writing longhand where eventually there's a kind of a synchronicity, an alignment of my thinking, my breathing, and my hand moving. And it doesn't happen right away. In fact, when I first start, I'll often find that I'm holding my breath. And it's like, what is happening? Just breathe already, unless there's a wildfire. So then there's this, can I slow down and trust that each word I am forming, each letter that I am intentionally forming, that there's actually enough time to listen to the next one, to breathe as I'm writing, to relax into it as a full-bodied kind of experience. It's not purely abstract anymore. It has become physical. It's not purely mental anymore. And there's something tactile about the holding of a pen and the feeling of your hand moving across the paper. So I would highly suggest that as a good strategy, especially if you're stuck in like where to begin, something like that. What else do you take away from those readings last week? Anybody online? Any Zoomers?
I mean, I think this was already said, but it did give some sort of comfort to know that like I wasn't alone about like struggling to even start or just like find a good path to take to get to where I wanted to go. Because I always feel rushed, and I would have teachers who would just not like explicitly tell me that I messed up and that I didn't like for not knowing what I was gonna say yet, but they definitely didn't give me like completely silent judgment about it. So I was always like, oh, it's my fault. Whoops. That was nice to read.
Oh, the silent judgment. It's very loud. More?
When I had to do speed writing for my AP classes, I would always find that when I had first read the prompt and I had to immediately write my thesis at the end of my paper did not match the thesis at my beginning, because the more I thought about it, the more my ideas changed. So I'd always have to go back and cross it out and redo it. So this made me feel like that was, normal.
Yeah. Our thinking evolves as we're writing. Yeah. More takeaways from the readings last week? All right, then let's talk about this. The research journal, Uncovering Your Rhetorical Self. How many people wrote about appearance? Okay, everybody in the room. Social media presence? Yeah? I can't, obviously we've got a bunch of people whose faces we can't see, so let's do this then. First of all, the big question is, what in the world does this have to do with writing, right? That's the big question, but we will make that, we'll talk about that in a minute. But to begin with, somebody liked, Grice says he liked, okay, Hunter, let's go back and get these real quick. Hunter says, oh wait, you guys can't see that over there. The fact that it's okay to have a shitty first draft. When I had to write in high school, my first draft was often my only draft. Good news, we're going to write more than one draft, and it's built into the assignment structure. So Grice says he liked reading a lot about questioning, and I took away that we as a society need to be more comfortable with questions. Yes. Questions actually, yeah, they're more human, as human. Okay, so first of all, what did you discover about yourselves via the writing about your rhetorical self? What was that experience like? Anybody on screen want to get us started? Okay, you don't have to. Okay. Anybody in the class like to get us started? All right, Katie.
I noticed when I was like writing about my appearance that I actually don't give a lot of thought into it. Like subconsciously, maybe I do. Like when I'm not like, but when I really thought about it, I was like, I don't really care what people think I look like. Like obviously, like my hair I care about, but that's about it. That's what I've realized.
Okay.
I was like, as long as my hair looks nice, then the rest of me is fine.
Okay. So even though it may not be motivated by what other people think, what do you notice that your choices say about who you are? Like what's important to you?
It was like mainly like I noticed that like I just like to be comfortable. And
Okay.
that's like whatever I'm most comfortable in, then that's just what I wear. Like if I wake up and think, oh, I want to wear pants, then I'll wear pants. But usually it's shorts.
So comfort, high value, and it's expressed through the way you appear.
Yeah.
Okay, that's important. Okay, more. Yeah.
I think one of the reasons or the things was like how you want other people to see you. And like I found that really hard to write about because like in my head there's all these things that I want people to see me as a good person and as like funny or like, you know, the person that can always go to when they need advice, but like it's really hard to be all those things.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to be all those things, and some of the expectations I have for myself, like I haven't even met those yet.
Right.
And like it's just hard to fill in everything that I want to be.
Yeah.
When I don't even know if I'm even like there yet.
Yeah. That's really good. Oh, Kelsey and Ellie. I realized I don't often dress to impress because I don't like drawing attention to myself based off of my appearance. However, I'm willing to be more open in the classroom because I would rather be valued and recognized for my ideas. Ellie, it was interesting to think about the way you present yourself impacts how people perceive you. I'd never really considered the intentional and unintentional choices I make that influence how people may interact or see me. Yeah, those are. I have so many thoughts careening through my head right now. I'm trying to think about the mouse in the jar and make some of them shut up. I'll get to them in a minute. Either of you who haven't talked?
I think it's difficult to talk about yourself in general, and then adding on top of it like an academic setting. I think that was just like, it was honestly really hard for me to get going at first.
Oh.
And then once I was able to like comfortably write, I think I was able to, you know, discover stuff about myself. Because I don't write about myself, quite honestly. You know what I mean? I barely even think about it. But and then you add like on top, you know, someone else is gonna read it. I feel like I was really self-conscious, you know.
Oh, really exposed.
Yeah, like I just felt vulnerable, you know.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a tough assignment. I mean, it really does require a sort of meta level observation of self. And yeah.
Yeah, I struggled a little bit to get going with this assignment as well because I was like, I put on basketball shorts and I go to school. What does that say? Versus when I like put on pants. I was like, that's how I was thinking about this. I was like, I don't really know what's the difference.
Right.
But yeah, I just basically like interpreted like how I feel like the way I dress, people know exactly where I'm from.
Huh.
I like took it that way, and I was like, people are gonna know exactly where I am from if I wear this, or like my viewpoints because of where I'm from.
Can you give an example?
Like, I wear clothes where people think it's like I go hiking all the time, so they think I'm like a hippie person, like weird Seattle person, and that's what I am. But like, it's like my clothes. I feel like people get that from my like appearance sometimes.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you like almond milk, don't you? Yes, I do like almond milk. That's the good one. Yes.
How'd you know?
Yeah. Because like I didn't really think about like the way people thought, because I was like I also mentioned like it's like I don't really find that dictating it, but it's like what other aspects are people perceiving like from that?
Yeah. Did I tell you that let's see, we've got a couple here. Alex, it was realized because I have a lot of energy naturally, I have to dial it back when I'm trying to come across professional versus when I'm just out with my friends. That's good. I don't know if did I tell you guys this? I actually set up I invited a class, this is last year, to basically tell me what it is they imagined was true about me based on the way I look. Remember that? Did I tell you this? No? Okay. So I was like, I'm not going to be offended. There's no way that this is going to offend me. I'm just inviting you to become aware that we definitely put messages out there without even necessarily knowing that we are. Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, I've been told by so many people, like, you would think it's absolutely insane how many people have told me they did not like me before they met me. Like, they all tell me all the time that, like, I'm super scary and, like, I'm super intimidating. They never liked me because of what they've, like, heard about me or what I look like, and, like, that I come off as, like, this scary person. And I'm like, okay, but, like, has that changed since you, like, met me? And they're like, yeah, I can't believe I ever thought about that, like, about you. And I'm like, it like almost hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know if it's like a backhanded compliment or if I should like feel good about it.
Or you want to say, like, what in the world?
Yeah, it's like what about me what did I do wrong before I even met me? And like I'm sure like people probably see me walking around campus and think that I'm like some scary like 5'8" woman walking around like just stomping over everything. But like I think that I'm like actually like completely opposite of that.
Okay.
So it's like weird. I don't know.
That just reminds me of like for our teammates. I remember like the first time we all met, like at least last year, it was just like whoever we thought was like mean or whatever. Like we initially that's what we thought, and then like obviously afterwards we're like, oh, you're actually nice, kind of thing. But that's just what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Or, like,
you're not nearly as awful as I thought you were.
Yeah.
I've had the experience where someone told me to my face that the first time that they met me, they thought I'd be really mean and really smart. And then later they're like, but neither of those are true. And oh, thank you. And then this is also related to like the clothes thing and like how people make assumptions about that. But especially specifically about like the Seattle, like, oh, you look like you're from Seattle. Well, I am, or like that area. I once asked a friend, I was like, oh, do you think, like, what do you think people will think of me, like, when I go to college? Like, do you think they'll think I'm straight? And they're like, no way. The way you dress, mm-mm. So I was like, great, cool.
So I've got a couple things here. We're going to talk about Efi's thought in a second about, I want to clarify a couple things about clear thinking and clear writing. And get back to that in a minute, but first let's close this loop in terms of what in the world does this uncovering of a rhetorical self exercise, whether you wrote about appearance, whether you wrote about Bay Area, whether you wrote about appearance, whether you wrote about social media presence, whether you wrote about the way you arrange your living space, or whether you wrote about where you shop, what is the point of meta reflecting on this rhetorical presence in the world? Any thoughts on that? What does this have to do with writing? Yeah.
I mean, we were like talking about how we're like the communicator and like there's a message based on how we like present ourselves. So it was like a very different way to be like everyday life, weird things or like rhetorical devices.
Yeah. Yes. So just to ask this, John, can you hold up your hydro flask? What have we got going on the hydro flask?
Stickers everywhere.
Stickers, yeah. This is definitely a rhetorical device, I'll tell you that right.
Tell us about it.
It's quite obviously that I like fishing, and I care about. Probably let you know my major right away.
I can't read from here, but
It just there's a bunch of stuff on like California wildlife and some brands and stuff, but it lets you know my major, what I'm interested in, kind of what I'm about, just by looking at the stickers on my hydro flask. Even having a hydro flask alone lets you know what kind of person I am. And then I add stickers to this thing. Oh, that's all you need to know about me.
It's all there.
Yeah.
Tell me some of the brands.
This is a Shimano sticker, so it's a reel and rod company, and then this is a Discount Tackle. It's a local fishing shop.
Okay.
And that's kind of all the brands I have. I'm gonna have a California wildlife sticker.
Okay. So the name of the tackle company, fish and tackle, reel and tackle company?
Oh, yeah, just Discount Tackle, yeah.
Okay. So you're using insider lingo without necessarily, like, tell me again the red letters along the bottom.
Shimano.
Shimano.
Yeah.
That's basically for those who know.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't.
Exactly. So this hydro flask is sending messages out to an audience that you don't even know where they're at. But it's like a beacon sound. It's like, who understands my language?
Yeah, it's kind of good though when like someone be like, oh, you have a Shimano sticker? I'm like, yes, what's up, dog?
Okay, there you are.
So it's like, that's kind of, I definitely do, you're right. Without realizing, I kind of feel like I do put that out there, you know?
Yes. So let's try to think of it we've all seen the ways that people use the stickers, the ways that people arrange their stuff, the sorts of things we spend our money on, like Dutch Bros is a thing for certain people, certain Dutch Bros. I'm not saying certain people, I mean, I just mean some people go to Dutch Bros a lot. That's where they go. Other people, like if you're in Northeast Portland, there's, what's it called? Shoot, Townsend's Tea. Townsend's Tea attracts a certain kind of person who hangs out and drinks Townsend's loose leaf tea. You see what I'm saying? Each of these little things is a message. So in terms of the writing that we do, and what you were getting at, Savannah, this idea of a communicator, audience, and a message, we know that we are entering conversations and entering communicative moments via different stances. And knowing where we're coming from gives us, being aware that we're coming from somewhere, being aware of that to begin with, gives us some options in terms of how to enter moments. For example, when I'm choosing to write about the quarantine, say I wanted to write an article about being in social isolation and quarantine, what position, what stance will I take as a communicator? Yes, I'm Jenna Thompson. We know that. But am I going to enter an article about being in quarantine from the perspective of an English professor whose students are now scattered across 6 states and 4 time zones? Am I going to write about the experience of quarantine as the mother of two teenage sons who are now stuck home and are missing out on key developmental experiences? Am I going to write about being in quarantine from the perspective of the oldest daughter of aging parents, right? In all of those settings and all of those rhetorical situations, I'm Jenna, but I'm entering from a little bit different vantage point as Jenna. I'm choosing my footing of how I'm going to enter the topic, how I'm going to approach the topic. One of the assignments that we have, the two research projects that we'll be doing this term, the midterm research research presentation and the research essay. For both of those, you will, prior to doing the writing, be thinking through a realistic rhetorical situation. who are you writing? Like, what stance are you taking as the communicator? And who are you writing to? For example, if I'm going to be writing about quarantine from the perspective of a mom who is home with 2 teenage sons, okay, great. That's not enough. Who am I writing to? Am I writing to my sons? Am I writing to other mothers of sons? Am I writing to school administrators with requests or questions about how to take care of my sons? There's all these different moving pieces. I might have a topic, but the topic itself isn't enough to get started. I got to think through, how am I entering this? What are my purposes? Who am I trying to reach? What am I trying to reach them about? Given what I want to reach them about, what's my best mode? Is a phone call the best? Is an email the best? Is an actual business letter the best? Is it best to set up an in-person meeting? All of these are ways of arranging purposefully, with a deliberate approach, how that communication is going to unfold. That makes sense? So that rhetorical, that research journal, Uncover Your Rhetorical Self, it's about learning the skills of meta-reflection, understanding that you can take lots of different stances and that you are sending messages rhetorically all the time. When we become aware of that, we have more freedom to make choices about that and how we want to use that power, I guess. Let's look at the notes here for a minute. I want to make sure I'm not losing anything. Somebody addresses very Bay Area. How do you portray yourself in the physical? How you portray yourself? Huh. Yes. Your writing itself is going to say things about, like your word choice, your sentence structure, the tone that you use. All of those things help, are communicating to your audience. Flip-flops regardless of the weather. Since this exercise had us think about the messages we might convey through our appearance and other things, it might help us through think how we can better convey messages through writing. And yes to the flip-flops. Up here, Evie said, where did it go? I think I missed it. Here we go. When you were talking about clarity of thought, it was a little bit concerning to me because I think that is one thing that's rarely ever in my possession. I don't know if I have ever really talked about something with clarity in my thoughts. Okay, so that's okay. I don't mean to communicate that a lack of clarity isn't all right. We may start there, but it's a starting place. As we write, we can write for a lot of reasons. We can write to communicate, to explain, to discover, to reflect, lots of purposes for our own writing experience. Writing to understand what we think is one of those purposes in writing. Flannery O'Connor, Southern short story writer, wrote, "I don't know what I think till I see what I say." Writing itself is a way of getting at the what we think. So if you don't know what you think about a subject, that's actually a totally fine place to start. Just know that when you're finally sharing your writing with an audience, you want your audience to be able to follow a map of your thinking. So even if you are ending in a place of a bit of ambivalence, you start with a question, you follow your question through research, you begin accruing a sense of what the conversation around the topic is, and you get to the end of your paper and you've still got more questions than answers, that's okay. What I'm talking about is that the writing itself would reflect a clarity of thinking about how you got to where you're at. I don't know if I'm making this better or worse right now. part of it. I'm just going to be fully transparent. This smoke, I have had a raging sore throat for the last few days. And it's, hey, it does make sense. Thank you. Well, that's a relief. Okay. So you write to discover what you think. And then when you've discovered more of what you think, you can be really deliberately clear with your audience about how you got there. But yeah, my writing's usually a great big, well, bit of a shit show until I have enough to work with. You can't edit a blank page, so you fill up the page. All right. Any other thoughts from the things that we were reading last week? No. Any questions about anything we've talked about today? Okay. So here's how we'll close out today. I said at the beginning that our goal is that we would leave the class with at least one thing we didn't come with, at least one takeaway that you can apply to your writing, your reading, and your learning. Go ahead and take a minute to jot it down, and then we're going to share it with each other, okay? We'll actually go around and hear from everybody if you're comfortable sharing, but again, if you're uncomfortable, no pressure. All right, let's hear some. You can add to the chat, or you can hop in and let us hear your voice, but let's start with the screens. Takeaways from today that you can apply to reading, writing, or learning in general.
I thought it was really reassuring to know that we don't have to be able to write fast, that sometimes it takes us longer. So that was helpful.
More? Zoomers? Andrea says, you don't need, oh, wait, we're flying in. You don't need fancy words to get your point across. Analyzing yourself is just as important as analyzing the text when writing. I don't need to come across as super certain about a topic. Don't expect the first draft to be easy to write and perfect. Just know you have written a first draft before and you can do it again. I would say that my main takeaway of sorts is that overly complicated writing or language is sometimes not the way to go if you wish to get your message or main idea across. Writing is conditional. One good essay won't be good under other circumstances. Good point. All right. Feel free to jump in and add more, but what do we got from in the room? Yeah, Savannah.
I like the idea of being okay with the struggle of writing and how you said like it's possible. Like don't look at it as good or bad. Like it's possible to like get a good piece of writing out.
It is. We will do it together.
I just like that we said about the ballet. It doesn't necessarily becomes easy, but it becomes possible. I think that like things I do repetitively, like writing or whatever it is, just because I do it a lot doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
It just means it makes it more possible.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you're not good at it. Yeah. More? Yeah.
I just said that like sometimes people aren't always what they appear to be, and like sometimes people don't know that they unintentionally like present themselves in a manner that they don't even want.
Yeah.
So like just be like courteous and like get to know someone before you really like judge them. I guess it's like super cliche, but like it's true.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that like I kind of forgot about like just like doing first drafts like on a piece of paper. Like I haven't done that since like middle school almost. And like when I'm typing, I just feel like a mindless zombie and my fingers are just going like 100 miles per hour, but I don't even know what I'm saying. It's just my unsubconscious mind running.
Oh, handwriting. You're free. There's something liberating. It's like you're free to write the worst junk in the world. Okay, so one big takeaway I had is that a lot of the limitations and guidelines we were given in terms of writing in high school are false. So sorry about that, guys. Writing depends on the context. If using informal language or contractions makes your writing more concise, then it is okay to write that way. Take your time and don't be too hard on yourself to get the perfect first draft. Never rush when writing a paper. Write multiple drafts to correct anything you did wrong before in the next draft. Good job. Thank you. That was really that felt fruitful. That felt good. Thanks for listening. It was nice to see you all. See you on Wednesday.